Yeah, so I've had this enviable or unenviable task of working with the dairy industry for the past 4 to 5 years. And so who of you here drink milk or eat cheese? Okay, so you're all supporters of the dairy industry, and we're all part of the system. We're part of the value chain as consumers. But often we don't really know what goes on behind the scenes, and it certainly opened my eyes as to what it actually takes to get that milk to us. And some of the figures around the water footprint are quite scary. So what is the big issue? Why did we focus on this particular sector? Well, it all started in around 2014 when we had chosen the Umgeni and the Mvoti catchments here to work together with Mondi on a resilient landscape approach. And we were just looking at what are the prevalent land uses. Dairy was a big one, but we started with a bit of a scoping exercise, and we compared 5 agricultural sectors and basically looked at their reliance on water, the risks they pose, and dairy came out as one of the highest. And so nobody else had worked with dairy before, so it just seemed like a good opportunity. And we know that there are many water resource impacts, like all of them, you name it. Quantity, quality, stream flow, the ecosystems. We know many pastures are sitting on top of previous wetlands. We've got the buffer zone degradation, typical issue, all the things that go with intensive agriculture. But in particular, irrigation is a massive water user. It's just scary how much water gets put down through the pivots and irrigation system. So dairy farmers said to me, no, he's not a dairy farmer, he's a grass farmer. And that's really what they do. It's all about grass and forage production. It's way cheaper to produce grass than to feed intensive feed in feedlots. And cows poop a lot, so you've got a lot of slurry, and that is high nutrient value, and you've got to do something with it. So it gets washed into a lot of yard cleaning and tank cleaning. All of that's got to go somewhere. Normally goes into slurry ponds. That's a very full one, and showing the kind of risks that at any moment that is going to spill over and go down to the closest drainage line. They also put the slurry, irrigate it, pump it out of those dams and onto the lands, and it is a valuable source of fertilization. That's a legitimate application. Obviously, you just don't want it right close to rivers or done in a way that you get excessive runoff. But where does dairy production occur? Well, we have a very nice overlap with our water source areas. Because what do they have in common? They're in the high rainfall areas. So the best dairy nodes, essentially, for the country are your KZN into a bit of Eastern Cape and Southern Drakensberg, and then the proper Eastern Cape, Jeffreys Bay, Tsitsikamma, and then Western Cape. So we cannot ignore dairy. It is very prevalent in an area that these are the taps and the economy of our country. So what's interesting about, if you look at the whole value chain, right from farm level production through processing, the packaging, distribution, retail, and finally the consumer, you might think to yourself, oh, it must be in the factory that they use the most water. But actually, through a life cycle analysis that WWF did in about 2011, turned out that 98 to 99% of total water consumption actually occurs at farm level. So that is definitely where we need to focus the effort. And unfortunately, this sector is not as organized as other sectors. So it doesn't have a formalized system or a standard in place, unlike forestry that has FSC, or a sugar industry that has sus farms, or pork industry has Pork 360. There is no sort of industry-wide benchmark. And so really, it's about trying to help them self-organize and improve their own self-regulation. So in realizing this, we had to quickly try and go to the national scale and work with the industry representative bodies to try and leverage their support and let that eventually trickle down to changes at farm level. And we soon discovered that there are severe industry politics. They've presented a couple of barriers. But as I say that, I'm thinking, well, what industry doesn't have politics? Probably every single one. And it's the typical things. It's like the CEOs of the heads of different organizations. There's often personality clashes. There's ego issues. And it's like, how do you navigate between keeping them on board, being, friendly to everyone, not putting this one off sides, and yeah, so it's been tricky. Essentially you've got Milk SA as the umbrella body, 2 sister and brother organizations underneath, one representing the producers, the other representing the processors, but they do not see eye to eye, and we need to be working with both, otherwise there's no change at scale. But we have seen that you can get sudden changes in leadership, and the impact is profound. So as soon as there was one particular change in leadership, they decided stewardship was one of their now new key pillars within their strategy. Now we had, we do need to talk to WWF because we do need to look at sustainability issues. So what has worked so far? Well, we started off, it was a little bit of, we could say, groundwork, trying to find our way in. We realized that there was some suspicion, like what does WWF want to do on our farms? Are they actually looking out for the cranes? Like, what is the agenda here? So we said, well, the agenda is water, and can we try and help you make better decisions around your water use? So we looked for volunteer farms. It wasn't that hard to find them. In the Karkloof and in the Moira, we worked through 2 irrigation boards, and we provided free agricultural engineer expertise, and we offered basically an irrigation and an energy efficiency assessment, and then looked at how they handled their wastewater, and then did one-on-one feedbacks, and found that the farmers really valued them. This is now talking real farming issues, and definitely helped deepen our understanding of where the gaps lay. For example, metering was a big one. Out of there were 64 pumps that were sort of assessed in terms of, are they reading correctly, are they calibrated amongst all those farms, and only 9 were metered. Of the 9, 3 were actually reading accurately. So we realized, okay, most people have no idea how much they're using, let alone getting an accurate reading. So this improved gave us a value proposition. However, in doing some of the hindsight work and going back and evaluating, many of them did implement the recommendations that were provided, so that was encouraging. However, it just seemed like some of the net savings, where they might have saved water by changing some of their systems, they were actually then able to irrigate additional land. So it's like, have we ultimately saved water? We're not. Debatable. We've put quite a lot through the industry publications, which has a very wide readership, about 12 articles to date, and really just to raise awareness for the issues, build our credibility as a knowledge provider, and we've definitely mainstreamed the concept of water stewardship and put it on the agenda. Haven't had too much individual feedback, so you often think, well, amongst a readership of 6,500, surely I'd get like somebody wanting to, talk to me about the article or, disagree with something. There hasn't been much of that, but it's like, you're doing that water work, so you kind of just get helps with your association. Then we were looking for a way to define what does good practice look like, so in very practical terms. So we thought, well, let's come up with a set of criteria that speaks to that water stewardship ladder that Brent showed us, those 5 steps, and on a dairy farm, what would you need to be doing to address each of those areas? And then we got Nedbank to sponsor the award, and was done through a dairy consultancy group called Interact. We did this for 2 years, then sort of reassessed and found Interact weren't being that enthusiastic about driving it through their clients, so we rather recommended that get shifted to MPO, the Milk Producers Organisation, and their sponsorship is now covering that, and it's being taken into the industry, and MPO is running with that. And recognition is a powerful motivator. They got a trip overseas to New Zealand as the prize to go and learn from leading farmers there and bring back their learnings here. And then just to say the other thing that really worked, I won't mention all of it, but we had 2 industry roundtable events, and that was really our big bridge builders. Never before had there been sort of in one room conservation, sector, and dairy coming together to share, and it was amazing to me how within their own sector it was that typical thing of silos. Someone at Nestle doesn't speak to someone at Danone, although they have the exact same job. They could benefit from some of the approaches that they're both using, and we just provided that opportunity. And out of the second one we held, there was the recommendation, let's form a smaller working group to take forward some project ideas and to get out there and in-field learning. So they really valued a non-competitive space. And again, it hadn't been done before. We did have to put some rules in place. You had to sign a competition declaration, but we got over that. And people just realized, okay, we're here to learn and share for the greater good of the sector. And we have quickly taken it out of the boardroom and onto into the field. And just to say, you might think, oh, that's like a committee, you know, what kind of a partnership is that? But any convened space where people can learn together, that's a learning partnership. So we don't have to always think about it in terms of a big MOU and a formalized system. You know, there's a lot of working groups and smaller things that happen. Think of that, your little sphere of influence that you work with. That is actually a learning partnership space. So now we have about 10 organizations and companies that are part of the working group meetings, and we've been rotating venues. What hasn't worked so well, I would say, is equal support from all the industry bodies. We have been more aligned with the MPO, just because they were the first to open their doors to us, but realized this is now slightly polarized some of the others, so it's a bit tricky. And it's like now we've got over the honeymoon phase, where they've accepted us, happy for us to be the neutral convener and bring everybody together, but now it's like, now what? Now we need to like move things up a notch. What about a formalized system or framework for the industry? And that buy-in is not there yet, and quite disappointing for me, because you sort of feel like after 4 years, like, come on people, like, you know, we can't waste more time. But you can only go as fast as your role players are willing to go. And if the buy-in is not there and the internal champion is not there, we are the external champion. But if those people within their own structures are not saying, guys, this is lift the vision, this is the way we have to go, you won't get anywhere. And then, you know, just saying the ongoing funding is now a bit of a challenge, but we really valued the funding we got from Mondi to basically open up a new space, and it had to be externally funded. And now we're at that point of saying, okay, what are they going to bring on board, and where are they going to put their money behind? And then that's my last slide, just saying, just some of the photos from where we've been to different venues together. And that is where the real learning has happened. That is where the best relationships and connections have been formed at a human level. Start to forget about the company association. And I think people remember what they see and have experienced far better than a PowerPoint or, you know, a chat in a room. Thanks.